I've had a request for a video on Elvis's 1970s studio albums, and that's what I'm going to be doing today. I'll be ranking them from my least favorite to my favorite. And there is a reason for doing that, and I'll explain it as we go along. And just so you know, I'm including That's the Way It Is and Moody Blue because they are mostly studio recordings on those albums. But I'm not including the Camden albums because those albums basically consist of mostly 1960s material. Okay, so let's get on with this. So coming up at the rear, we have The Wonderful World of Christmas. It's not that I dislike this album, although I could live without Elvis's versions of Silver Bells and Winter Wonderland. He sounds a bit bored on those tracks to me. And it was released in this gatefold cover. On the left side, Japanese sleeve notes, and on the right, English lyrics. And it also has a handwritten message from Elvis. Merry Christmas to all the fans in Japan. Thank you, Elvis Presley. It's on the orange RCA label. All the albums were released with this same orange RCA label, so I'll just show you this one. I do have a white label promo copy of one album, and I'll show you that too. The next one, going up the list from the bottom, is Love Letters from Elvis. The front cover and the back cover are very similar to the American version. But once again, this album was released with the gatefold sleeve, and on this occasion we actually have two photographs on the inside cover there. Most of the gatefold covers didn't have any photographs. Otherwise it's similar to the previous album. This album actually came with a little bonus, and it was an envelope, an airmail envelope addressed to Mr. Elvis Presley, MGM Studios, Culver City. And I have no idea how many people actually sent Elvis a love letter in these envelopes, but they are actually very hard to find. Most copies of the album will turn up without this envelope. There is a version available without the envelope that was released without the envelope, and the way to tell if you have that version is by looking at the top of the obi here. So just below the RCA logo you can see there's some text in a block, and on the second version that block is missing. So you have the RCA logo and then a blank space before this row of stars. That one is actually more difficult to find than this one, although finding this one with the obi is also quite difficult. Number 11 on the list is the 1970s religious album, He Touched Me. This album actually contains the one religious song Elvis did that I don't enjoy, and that is There Is No God But God. It's a pretty lame song, if you ask me. And the cover is a bit of a throwback to the 1960s. So it's not a gatefold, it's a single pocket sleeve with the sleeve notes on the back there. It did come with an insert as well, which contains all the lyrics to the songs in English. I have a second copy of that album which has a slightly different obi. You can see that the color scheme has changed from red, white and blue to red, black and white. And this one dates from late 1975 or later. The back cover is exactly the same, and it also has that same insert. Let's try it again. At number 10, we have the album from 1976 from Elvis Presley Boulevard. No, that's not right either. At 10, we have an album from 1976 from Elvis Presley Boulevard, Memphis, Tennessee. And this album marked a period of the Japanese simply using the same covers that they used on the American releases. Of course, you always get the lyrics with Japanese releases, so there was, of course, an insert as well with all the words on. And Japanese liner notes on the reverse. Next up at number 9 is 1972's Elvis Now. And this has a different back cover to the American version, with this picture of Elvis in concert from the early 70s. And I've shown this one before, and I mentioned at the time that the song titles here omit Early Morning Rain. This was actually the last regular studio album to be released in a gatefold sleeve. And it's the standard design, Japanese text on the left, English lyrics on the right. I have another copy to show you from 1974. This is actually the most difficult pressing to find. By this point, they were not using the gatefold cover design anymore. As you can see, it's the same as the American cover. So naturally, they also included an insert with lyrics and liner notes. The next one is 1973's Elvis, aka Fool. And the Japanese title is actually Fool. And the text at the top of the OB here, that actually reads Fool in Japanese. And this album marked the beginning of a short period where the back covers were different to the American releases, even though it's not a gatefold. Maybe there was some complaint after the He Touched Me cover, I'm not sure, but this one was released with this striking back cover. All the song titles are here in Japanese. And once again, the album came with a separate insert with English lyrics on one side, Japanese liner notes on the other side. And number 7 is 1973's Raisin on Rock, although this actually came out in 1974 in Japan. And having done such a good job of the Elvis or Fool album, for some reason they decided that it would be okay to release the album in the same cover as the American version. However, they did make up for things slightly with the inclusion of this very nice bonus photo, which has a discography on the other side. The album also came with this insert, which was unusual in that it actually has Japanese lyrics as well as English lyrics on the inside. And like the version of He Touched Me that we saw earlier, this album also exists with this later red, black and white obi. So this one too will date from late 1975 or later. There's no picture with this one, but it does have the 4-page insert, but no photograph. I actually have a theory about this cover, probably completely wrong, but you know how the album has 2 titles, Raisin on Rock for Old Time's Sake? Well, maybe they were going for a single look. You know how in America singles have the same picture on the front as they do on the back, only the titles change. Just like this, For Old Time's Sake on the back, Raisin on Rock on the front. So maybe they were going for a single jacket look. Probably completely false, but why else would they do this? So I best be on my way in the early morning rain. At number 6 we have Moody Blue, the last album released during Elvis's lifetime, although it didn't come out in Japan until September. So probably Welcome to My World got all the sales that this album would have had it been out at the time of Elvis's death, although it's not a difficult album to find. You can actually see that there are 2 obis on the front, the regular one here in orange and this black one here, which is kind of like a black armband. So the text at the top here reads Elvis is forever, or Forever Elvis, whichever way you want to read it. And at the bottom it has when he was born and when he died. Just as with the Boulevard album, the back cover is exactly the same as the American version. Of course, it does also come with the insert, English lyrics on one side, Japanese text on the other side. If you're interested in getting a rarer copy of Moody Blue, then you could look out for this one here. and this one came out in 1985 with this 50th anniversary blue and white obi. The LP, the insert, and the cover are all exactly the same as the ones I just showed you. So what they did was they just took leftover copies of this album and stuck a new obi on it at the time the 50th anniversary series came out. But this one is actually much more difficult to find than the one with the orange obi. Sammy, am I getting through? So we're into the top 5 now, and for me number 5 is Promised Land. And just as with Fool, the back cover has a Japan only design. Not one, but 2 concert photos on the back. Of course, you get the words to the songs and Japanese essay and a picture as well. If you want to get a slightly rarer version, you could look out for this copy here. And the difference between this one and the one I just showed you is the color of the text on the obi. So this actually has purple colored text. The previous one has blue writing. And the way to tell the difference, or the way to be sure you've got the rarer one, is just to look at the bottom of the obi here, where my finger is here, and you'll see the letters RVC. Okay, so if you don't see RVC, then you've got the first issue. This is the later pressing. Number 4 is another Stax album, Good Times. And this copy that I have here is actually the later version with this orange and purple color scheme on the obi. The original one was yellow and black. Once again, at this time, the back covers were different from the American versions, and the song titles are all in Japanese under the obi. And of course, it came with the usual insert. Number 3 is 1975's Today album. Never really liked this cover photo, to be honest. Something about the eyes. It's not a particularly clear photograph. But the back cover is much better on the Japanese version, because you get 2 color shots from the Aloha TV special. And of course you get the insert as usual. So we're down to the top 2, and most of you will know what those 2 albums are. It's just a question of which is number 2 and which is number 1 for me. And number 2 is That's the Way It Is. Now I've got a lot of different Japanese copies of this album, and I've already done a video about those. Most of those copies are in that video. However, this is one I didn't have at the time, so I've chosen this one for today. And this is actually a pressing from around about 1974, and it has this shot from Elvis on tour on the back cover. And what's interesting about this particular version is the design of the obi. And if you look at the bottom here, you can see this white strip that is blank. And in a previous version of this obi, it had details of a free gift called a mini capsule, and I've already done a video showing one of those mini capsules. The mini capsule campaign deadline had passed by the time this album was sold, so they simply removed the mini capsule text from this part of the obi and left it as a blank white strip. The gatefold cover has 2 very striking photographs from the Elvis on Tour documentary. And if you're wondering about the lyrics and other stuff you normally get with a Japanese album, well, they're all contained in this 6-page booklet here. And so for me, the best Elvis 1970s studio album was Elvis Country. This is the first Japanese issue. It was actually called I Really Don't Want to Know in Japanese at the time. The back cover is the same as the American version. However, the inside was gatefold design. And that brings me back to why I decided to do this as a ranking video rather than do it in chronological order. Because, to put it bluntly, the covers got worse over the decade. At the beginning of the 1970s, the albums were basically packaged like this one here in these very nice gatefold sleeves. And then they went through a little period where they put them in single sleeves, but they chose different back cover photographs. And then from the Boulevard album onwards, they basically just copied the American designs and added an insert. So my original pressing of Elvis Country is a white label promo copy. And if you want to look out for a rarer version, this is the 1985 issue with the Elvis 50th anniversary Obi. This time it's just a single sleeve, not a gatefold. The record and the cover and the insert of this version are actually the 1975 pressing. Only the Obi is from 1985. And naturally it came with an insert, English on one side, Japanese on the other. So there you go, Elvis's 1970 studio albums ranked from 13 to number 1. What's your favorite? What's your least favorite? Let me know in the comments. Thanks a lot. Cheers.